Thursday night's MLB slate. It's a little one, but it's only a 5-gamer. But you've got. I didn't want to. I was talking to Sheets pre-show. I didn't want to imply that it's easy necessarily. It's just there aren't that many games, but it is a little tricky to try to get different, and that's what the name of the game is. We'll see how my 3-3-2 stack works out in the early slate, because that's what I ended up going with, a 3-3-2 Seattle, Chicago, and then two of the Angels.
I have 8 pitchers I can play tonight out of in a 5-game slate. So we'll go through it. I mean, listen, they have various degrees of ownership, and you know what I mean, and ratings. But I literally could play 8 guys. So I'd be interested to see what you think about this. And as far as hitting goes, I could play. I could do a bunch of things as far as hitting goes also. So I'm interested to go over this.
Yeah, I totally agree. So let's pull up your screen. We'll go game by game, because I think that it's funny because I sometimes complain about the small slates, but I actually like the baseball where you're just forced to have to do something weird, and sometimes on big slates where I feel like maybe I make some mistake is that I'm okay too much maybe with the 10% owned stacks, and it's really hard to find anything even 10% owned that you really like in these spots usually. But with that said, we get into the first game. Kyle Gibson and Joey Wentz. I actually, as crazy as this sounds, I'm not going to do this, but just to show how many pitchers. Kyle Gibson is completely viable to me. But I actually think that, in a very strange way, that Joey Wentz would actually be in consideration if there wasn't.
I don't even know why you're laughing. That's the funny thing.
It feels wrong.
He would probably be the guy that I play right now, just because of his ownership, and he's just close enough to what's going to be up 30% on Joey Lucchesi. You know what I mean? I don't know. I got no problem with that.
Yeah, and you go lefty against Baltimore, which does take away some of their. I mean, they've got some good righties, but a lot of these guys hit better left-handed. They're switch hitters, and you have it's 57 degrees with 10-mile-an-hour winds blowing in from left. I feel like I'm a broken record with that. I don't understand how it happens that every game in the early season has to have the wind blowing in. It just seems to go that way. But yeah, Gibson is definitely one of the guys I'm considering. I do think the lefties for the Tigers, because that wind isn't going to affect them, are one way to get different. Matan, Riley Green, McKinstry, all super cheap, not as a stack, but probably as guys who I have no problem putting in. And as I said, I would just prefer to play the lefties in this game. And there are no lefties in the lineup except for Mullins batting ninth, probably for Baltimore. Kind of weird when your best hitter, you start moving into the 9 hole against lefties. It's kind of weird. But yeah, I mostly just am interested in the pitching here, and not really interested in the hitting at all. Other than
I would get to I could get a little bit of the hitting. You know what I mean? I don't know. Again, 5-game slate, not the end of the world. But I think that both these pitchers are definitely in the second group. They're not in the first group,
right?
But the ownership is tiny for these guys. So I would be. I might try it.
Yeah, and we know Kyle Gibson has a monster. I mean, he just put up 35 against this same team. Now, we know that sometimes I always say that I don't like it when they have the back-to-back starts. Doesn't seem like you usually see 2 gems in a row. But still, it's Detroit, and it's Kyle Gibson. And before Sheets corrects me and says, well, Detroit's the greatest team in baseball, I'm just going to point out that I think we have to just bet on the long-term results rather than how they've personally destroyed our survivor pools.
They just won the World Series only 30 years ago. They should be.
You mean Justin Verlander and all those guys aren't there? Miguel Cabrera's not what? He's not 28 anymore. If he was ever 28, I don't know. Is he 50? I don't even know what age he was.
Is Alan Trammell still the shortstop?
Yeah, you got Alan Trammell at short.
And Kirk Gibson, is he still on the team?
Kirk Gibson, yeah. Michigan's own. Okay. Anyway, so we move over to the White Sox and Rays. And again, 56 degrees, 10-mile-an-hour winds blowing in from left field. And you have 2 just absolutely just awesome pitchers for everything, for DFS.
Yep.
These guys have got to be right near the top of the list, if not at the top of the list. I actually am surprised to see that McClanahan isn't projecting to be 50% owned. I really thought
because Cole's going to be a million.
I think that those two though could fair enough. I really think that I really like both these pitchers. Yep. I actually would make a case the White Sox are usually better against lefties. They have a lot of guys who actually have decent career numbers, but you're getting the wind blowing in. It's going to kill any power upside. McClanahan is just awesome. I have McClanahan ahead of Cease, but I do think both of these guys are really good options, and I just can't quite get to the hitting in this game.
Yeah, actually, I have them both very similar rated, Cease and McClanahan. If it turns out that ownership projections adjust and say for some reason because of his price, Cease becomes pretty popular, I wouldn't mind taking a shot at some Tampas, but only if the ownership really starts to crank. Like right now, I do have them at 25%, but if it turns out that cranks up higher, I would take a shot at a couple of Tampas. And I just don't think the ownership can get up there as much with McClanahan because of his price. You know what I mean? I think people could play Cole and Cease, but it's harder to play Cole and McClanahan. So I think Cease is going to end up more popular than McClanahan at the end of the day.
I don't.
Okay, we'll see how it goes.
I just think that people still have. I mean, just seeing the Hunter Brown at 4% last night is
because of the Tampa idea. Okay, I got it.
Yeah, just people have this respect, and also Cease just struggled against Tampa, and he's actually struggled his last two outings. So I think McClanahan is going to look. I think it's going to end up McClanahan, Cole looking very, very popular at the end of the day. All right, Washington and the New York Mets. We've got actually 54 degrees. Slight winds blowing across the field, nothing to affect anything as much. I don't think I'm going to be alone in saying that I really like the Mets. I do think that it's a very difficult stack to play if you're going to try to play the top pitchers because these guys are expensive. You can use Beatty or Vogelbach as value. The problem is then you're not playing Pete Alonso, and even though he put up 0 last night, I always feel afraid of stacking the Mets without Alonso. And as far as Washington goes, I don't know what I want. I don't know what I want to do with the Lucchesi thing, and I also can't find anything on Washington that I feel great about hitting wise. But I do think if I'm not playing Lucchesi, I am totally cool. I mean, Lucchesi just put up 1 million fantasy points the other day. Keibert Ruiz is an interesting guy. The Lane Thomas or Alex Call as a cheap maybe mini stack are viable to me. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, so Lucchesi rates to be a good play. He's he's coming off a good performance and he's got Washington, so he's going to rate to be a good play. But I don't have to do that. As a matter of fact, I got no problem playing some Washington here. I mean, remember this was coming off like a pretty big layoff.
Yeah.
And typically this is the way it works, man. You come off the big layoff with a big performance, whether you're a freaking human being or a horse or whatever, you just tend to regress in your next start, your next outing. So I would probably fade Lucchesi, and play maybe a couple of Washingtons instead. If the ownership is what we think it's going to be. And the Mets certainly look like a really good play. But like you said, it becomes a little bit difficult to do given the prices, given that, that you're going to want to play these better pitchers.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, I'll tell you what, if you play Cole McClanahan and you want to stack the Mets, what you can do and maybe get different enough is play the 3-man from the Washington side.
That's true.
Lane Thomas, Keibert Ruiz, and maybe Meneses, but then you get into the same issue of do I really want to play the Mets and not play Pete Alonso?
Okay.
And by the way, Sheets just had a beautiful lineup. Didn't end up winning it, but it looked like it was gonna for a minute. And he did the nice Brave stack without Acuna. So why couldn't we do a Mets stack without Alonso if we wanted to? So
if I'm not mistaken, the Angels scored like 7 million runs last night, and Trout had like 4 fantasy points.
Right. It just happens. It just happens. So maybe that's a differentiator. You play the Meneses, the 3-man with Washington, and then the Mets stack. I kind of like that idea actually as a first way to maybe get a little bit different.
How bad is
the Minnesota weather?
No, how bad is the Trevor Williams as a play?
I just can't see what their purpose would be.
Oh, I mean, well, the purpose would be to, so you can get up to Cole, so you don't have to play with Cheesy, so you don't have to, you know what I mean? I don't know. I'm just throwing out. I'm not really getting to him at all. I'm just
I just can't. And like against the Mets, even if it works, there's other cheap pitchers that are gonna. Even if it works, I think the other cheap pitchers outscore him enough.
Fair enough.
And do we need the savings to play? Maybe. I mean, the truth is, he's probably a little bit better than he gets credit for, which doesn't mean he's good. But you're looking at if he has a good game like he did last time out, you're looking at 15 fantasy points, and I just think that's just feels like a tough matchup for him.
Well, since you brought it up, what is the weather like in Minnesota?
By the way, I'm going to have to change some things in the early look because the Atlanta game is looking kind of scary.
Is it really?
Change my pitcher. Okay. We'll see what happens with that one.
There's an update.
I was just looking at the weather report.
That's what I mean. So there's a weather update is what I'm saying?
I mean, updated. I don't know what time is that game? I should probably take a look here real quick.
Now orange, yellow.
Not ideal when you're playing the pitcher, but it's already started. So
can't do anything anyway, right?
Anyway, okay, good. Because I wasn't going to, but I actually think that I think they'll probably be fine. Knock on wood. All right, Molly and Greinke here against another one of his former teams. Let's go. 66 degrees.
Minnesota or Greinke?
Not on Greinke, no. I think Tyler Mahle is extremely viable, and I really like Minnesota. I'm just going to see if they're going to end up as the most popular team because they might. And that's the worry here. So Minnesota is going to be really popular. I still like them. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to do it at high ownership, and pretty good hitting weather though for the game. Maybe you could make an argument on the other side of getting some of these Royals in, and they're not even going to be unowned. But if you get the Melendez in the lineup, you've got Melendez, Witt, and Perez, who are all viable, I think, to all actually really good plays. And then you've got Pascantino you could include. They're actually looking like they're going to get a little bit of ownership today, which kind of surprises me because Molly's actually a pretty good pitcher. I guess that's my thing. I like the Twins, but I'm going to have to deal with the ownership. And I like Molly, but I think that there's just other pitchers on the slate I probably am going to have ahead of him.
Yeah, I agree with your first sentence. I like Molly and I like Minnesota, and I worry that Minnesota is going to be the highest owned on the slate. So my sentiment is pretty much exactly the same. So we'll have to see where ownership is coming in. We'll see what that rain cloud looks like. Doesn't look like that big of a deal right now. And if weather is totally neutral, whatever that means, I think Molly's a good play and Minnesota's a good play.
Yep. All right, let's move over to Texas and New York. I think the best tournament play on the slate is Heaney. I also think that the Yankees, for good reason, are going to have pretty decent ownership. I think there's it's just if you get the good Andrew Heaney game, you could be looking at 30 fantasy points. He can strike out literally half the guys when things are rolling for him. There's no consistency. There won't be ownership on him, and his ceiling. He's the only guy here who has a legitimate, realistic ceiling that's the same as Garrett Cole, McClanahan, and Cease. He's cheaper, and he's going to be far lower on than all of them. So I have to at least mention him. I also think the Yankees, the flip side is nobody has a wider range of outcomes than that guy does. The flip side is the Yankees are a really reasonable stack and also going to be very popular. If you play them, maybe using Oswaldo Cabrera, if he's in the lineup, he'd be one guy you could use to get different Peraza will be a little bit lower owned from their side, batting at the bottom of the order. Just trying to find a way to do it. It's tricky. But I have the Yankees as the third best stack, and also probably the third most popular stack. So trying to find ways to get different here are going to be tough. And Garrett Cole is I think the second best play on the slate behind McClanahan right now, if you ask me. You could argue most people will have him at first. That's fine. I just think I have him just barely second to McClanahan, but they're very, very close. And it is interesting because this Texas lineup has been, we've seen some pretty big boom out of them at times. And if you, one thing you're doing, if you're not playing Cole tonight, I think you can play a one-off of basically any of the power bets, whether Simeon's kind of hard because he's 6K, Garcia's hard because he's 5,800, but a one-off of Jonah Heim at 4,200 or a one-off of Nate Lowe. It's just one way to get different, and that should be the name of the game on this slate. So just wanted to throw that out there. But as of right now, this is the problem I have going through it, is that all the teams I like are popular. I think I'm going to stick maybe with my Mets idea, with my Washington idea, and play the mini stack with one of these other stacks. I also don't think you need to stack. Like you could play like a 3-3-2 tonight. It's a 5-game slate. Like there's really no reason you have to 5-man stack if you don't want to. And all of these teams that we like stacking, one way to get different with them would be to not fully stack them.
Yeah, so we need to work on our presentation a little bit, because this is always what happens. What happens is whenever you give your last game breakdown.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
you transition right.
I should always have you start the last one.
It was great. You know what I mean? It transition right into your slate preview, and I don't get to talk about the last game.
I'm so sorry, man.
No, it's not sorry. We were both working on it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So we got to remember, that I should probably start the last game, so this way you could because you transitioned it so perfectly. But I didn't want to
I appreciate it.
Want to deprive the people of my incredible take that Garrett Cole's a good play here, because otherwise they wouldn't have been able to come up with that. But I did want to say about this game really is that this is, and it's funny because after this I'm going to be doing an MMA video, and it's a very important transition into MMA, because sometimes in MMA, you identify fights that you just know are going to smash one way or the other, but you're not exactly sure which way it's going to be. And this is a perfect example of an MMA fight. You have the Yankees, who probably rate to be the best stack and the highest owned, and you have Haney, who could either just blow the whole slate to pieces with like a 35 ball, or cooperate and have the Yankees put up 10 runs. And I do think you have to play both of them. I think you have to play the Yankees, and I think you've almost forced to play Haney. Okay. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is that Cole looks like, obviously a really, really good play, but you could pivot off of Cole either, like you were saying, by playing McClanahan. And you play both McClanahan and Cease if you want, and then say, let Cole just do whatever. But I have to tell you, and this is not something I normally do, but I wouldn't mind playing some of those Texas guys. Like you said, they've been beating the crap out of the ball now, albeit against like the worst of the worst, right?
Right.
But Cole has been known to give up some home runs.
I know he gave up the most home runs in baseball last year. To his credit, he hasn't given up any this year.
And you know what's going to happen. You're going to play, a couple of guys in the Texas lineup. They're going to literally get 3 home runs in a row, and then Cole will end up at 40 anyway. And so the winning lineup, which no one will have both Cole and Texas probably in it. It's not a small enough slate for me to play both Cole and like a Texas guy, I don't think. But if there were maybe, boy, would I do it at 4 games? I don't know. I would definitely do it with 3, but I don't think I'm going to do it with 4. But that's pretty much we're pretty much in agreement. But I just want to reemphasize how important this Haney thing is, because he could legitimately. Now, listen, he's not going to outscore Cole or, for example, McClanahan or Cease if everybody just kind of pitches what they do, But if you get kind of like a median pedestrian performance out of Cole, whatever, Haney does have that 30, 35 in him. And as we talked about against the Yankees in the past couple of days, the Yankees have not exactly put out Murderers Row, you know, in the last, you know, couple of days, and there's strikeouts in that lineup, you know, and you get Haney rolling. There's nothing more that he would like than to, there's nothing more anybody would like than to be able to have a good game against the Yankees.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I just fiddling around with some builds. It's pretty easy to do what you want, but I do think that I'm going to try to get to some Heaney tonight for sure. Just and those will probably be the lineups where I don't use Garrett Cole. I probably will do a Heaney McClanahan or something like that. Anyway, it's a you know, it's a little 5-gamer, but it should be fun, and I will be live at some point around 5:30 is my plan right now, but I might be a few minutes later than that. We'll have plenty of time to talk over it, even if it's 6 Eastern because of the
and I'm going to do my best for 5:30.
All right, awesome.
Okay.
Well, good luck today, everybody, and hopefully we'll see you at the top of the leaderboards later on. Good luck tonight.